The Act on the Stabilisation of the Pension Level and Full Equalisation of Child-Rearing Periods marks a significant milestone in German pension policy. It reflects a commitment to securing retirement provisions for future generations while correcting existing injustices within the system. This law was developed in response to the demographic challenges Germany faces, particularly an aging population and the associated financial pressures on the pension system. A core objective of this act is to stabilize the pension level. The pension level is the ratio of the average standard pension to the average wage. In recent decades, this ratio has been steadily declining, meaning pensioners could maintain a progressively lower standard of living compared to active workers. The law aims to halt this trend and stabilize the pension level at a minimum of 48%. This ensures that people who have worked and paid into the pension fund their entire lives can receive a dignified provision in old age. The challenges facing the German pension system are numerous and complex. Germany's birth rate has been below the replacement level for decades, while life expectancy continues to rise. This means fewer and fewer workers are financing more and more pensioners. The so-called old age dependency ratio, the ratio of people of retirement age to those of working ages, continuously worsening. Without countermeasures, this would lead to either drastically falling pensions or significantly rising contribution rates, both of which would be socially untenable. Therefore, the Act introduces several mechanisms to stabilize the pension level. First, the pension adjustment formula is modified. Damping factors that previously led to lower pension increases are weakened or suspended. This means pensions are more closely tied to wage developments, allowing pensioners to participate more fully in general prosperity. Furthermore, federal funds are provided to support the pension insurance system, ensuring that stabilizing the pension level is not financed solely through higher contributions from the insured. Another crucial aspect of the law is the full equalization of child-rearing periods. Historically, child-rearing periods were treated differently in the German pension system depending on when a child was born. For children born before 1992, only 1 year of child-rearing was credited. For children born after that, up to 3 years were credited. This unequal treatment was widely perceived as unjust, especially by mothers of the older generation who suffered significant losses in their own employment and thus their pension entitlements due to raising their children. The Act corrects this injustice by retroactively recognizing the same number of child-rearing years for all children, regardless of their birth year. Specifically, this means that even for children born before 1992, 3 years of child-rearing time are now credited. This leads to a significant improvement in the pension situation for many older women who were previously disadvantaged by the old regulation. The equalization of child-rearing periods is not just a matter of justice. It is also a recognition of the value that raising children has for society. The societal importance of child-rearing can hardly be overstated. Parents who raise children make a fundamental contribution to the continuity and future viability of society. They raise the next generation, which will later finance the pension system through their contributions. It is therefore only logical that this contribution is appropriately recognized in the pension system. The previous unequal treatment contradicted this principle and pushed many women who interrupted or reduced their employment for child-rearing into financial difficulties in their old age. The implementation of the full equalization of child-rearing periods is being done step by step to manage the financial burden on the pension insurance system. Previous reforms had already increased the credit from 1 to 2 years. This act now takes the final step towards full equalization at 3 years. The costs of this measure are partially financed from the federal budget. As it is a task for society as a whole that should not be borne solely by the contributors to the pension insurance. Financing the Act is one of the biggest challenges in its implementation. Stabilizing the pension level and equalizing child-rearing periods create significant additional costs for the pension system. These costs are covered by a combination of different measures. A portion is financed through higher federal subsidies, meaning tax revenue is used to support the pension insurance. This is appropriate because certain benefits of the pension insurance, especially the recognition of child-rearing periods, represent tasks for society as a whole that go beyond the classic insurance benefit. Furthermore, it is assumed that stabilizing the pension level will also have positive effects on the economy. Pensioners with higher incomes have more purchasing power, which strengthens domestic demand and contributes to economic growth. This, in turn, leads to higher tax revenues and Social Security contributions, which can partially offset the additional costs of the Act. Moreover, the improvement in the pension situation is expected to reduce old age poverty, thereby also lowering spending on social assistance and basic security in old age. Another aspect of financing concerns the contribution assessment ceiling and the contribution rate. The law stipulates that while the contribution rate to the pension insurance may rise, it will only do so within a socially acceptable framework. At the same time, the possibility of generating additional revenue by adjusting the contribution assessment ceiling without overburdening middle incomes is being examined. These measures are part of an overall concept aimed at distributing the burdens fairly and considering the interests of both contributors and pensioners. The equalization of child-rearing periods not only affects individual pension entitlements, but also sends an important signal about the appreciation of family work in society. For a long time, care work, which was predominantly done by women, was systematically undervalued. This was reflected not only in the pension system, but also in other areas of the social security system and the labor market. The law is therefore also a contribution to gender equality and the recognition of unpaid work. The law's impact on gender equality is substantial. On average, women are much more affected by old age poverty than men, mainly because they more frequently interrupt their careers or work part-time to raise children. By fully crediting child-rearing periods, women's pension entitlements are strengthened, and the pension gap between men and women is reduced. This is an important step towards a more just society where family work and paid work are treated as equals. The Act also has implications for the compatibility of family and work by giving child rearing adequate consideration in the pension system. It signals that the decision to have children does not have to lead to significant financial disadvantages in old age. This can help encourage more people to have children, which could also counteract demographic change in the long term. However, this measure must be combined with other political initiatives to support families, such as expanding childcare and flexible working time models to achieve its full effect. Stabilizing the pension level also contributes to social security and social peace. When people can trust that they will receive an adequate pension in old age, it strengthens confidence in the welfare state and the principle of solidarity. Conversely, a continuous decline in the pension level would lead to growing uncertainty and social tensions. The Act is therefore not just a technical adjustment of the pension system, but also a commitment to the social market economy and the principle of intergenerational equity. However, the Act also faces challenges and criticisms. A central question is whether the financing is sustainable in the long term. Critics point out that demographic developments will place an ever-increasing burden on the pension system in the coming decades. Stabilizing the pension level and equalizing child-rearing periods could therefore cause even higher costs in the future, which may no longer be financeable. It is argued that additional structural reforms are necessary to ensure the long-term sustainability of the pension system. One possibility would be to promote private and occupational pensions as a supplement to the statutory pension. Although the statutory pension insurance is to remain the main pillar of old age provision, strengthening the other pillars could help make the system as a whole more stable. However, past experience shows that private provision cannot close all gaps, and people with low incomes are often unable to save privately in addition. Another point of discussion is the retirement age. Some experts argue that given rising life expectancy, the retirement age would also have to be raised further to keep the system affordable. However, this is socially controversial, especially for people in physically demanding jobs who cannot work into old age. The Act on the Stabilization of the Pension Level does not address this issue, which critics see as an omission. The equalization of child-rearing periods is welcomed by most as an overdue correction of a historical injustice. Nevertheless, there are critical voices who note that the measure primarily benefits women of the older generation, while younger generations may need other forms of support. It is also debated whether 3 years of credit are sufficient or whether longer periods of child rearing should be given more weight. For example, when several children are raised or when there are special care needs, implementing the law also requires administrative adjustments. The pension insurance providers must integrate the new regulations into their systems and ensure that all eligible individuals receive the benefits they are entitled to. This can be a challenge, especially with the retroactive recognition of child-rearing periods, where proof may be required that dates back decades. However, the pension insurance has announced its intention to make this process as unbureaucratic as possible and to actively inform affected individuals. In the long run, the Act on the Stabilisation of the Pension Level and Full Equalisation of Child-Rearing Periods is a crucial step in securing old age provision in Germany. It addresses two central problems of the pension system: the declining pension level and the unequal treatment of child-rearing periods, and it offers concrete solutions. At the same time, it is clear that further reforms will be necessary to make the pension system future-proof. Demographic change, shifts in the labor market, and societal transformations require continuous adaptation and development of social security systems. Overall, the Act represents a balance between various interests and goals. It attempts to preserve the entitlements of pensioners without overburdening the younger generations. It acknowledges the value of child-rearing for society and corrects a historical injustice, and it sends a signal that the welfare state is capable of acting even in difficult times and is willing to invest in social security. Whether the Act can achieve its goals will be seen in the coming years, but it is undoubtedly a significant step in the development of German social policy. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into important topics like this.